Have you ever felt like your prayers go unanswered? No matter how much faith you have? What if I told you there is one specific day when the spiritual world opens in a way that almost no one understands? A day when St. Anthony doesn't just hear prayers, he walks among us, holding keys that unlock doors you thought were shut forever. July 23rd is not just a feast day, it's a spiritual portal, a divine appointment that Padre Pio described as a moment when heaven bends low and grace pours like rain. But here's what almost no one knows. Miracles on this day aren't automatic. They require alignment. They require 3 sacred actions Padre Pio revealed only to those closest to him. And today, you're going to discover exactly what those actions are. Not vague devotions, but 3 precise practices that have transformed lives, healed families, released financial blessings, restored the impossible. The third one, it's the most powerful of all, and few people ever complete it. Her name was Maria Delgado, a widow from Texas who had spent years carrying the weight of heartbreak. 3 years earlier, her business partner, someone she considered family, betrayed her. He stole money, trust, and peace, and left her drowning in debt. But what hurt most wasn't the money, it was the bitterness that crept into her prayers. She felt stuck, abandoned by heaven, silenced by her own pain. On the morning of July 23, Maria decided to try something she had never done before. A quiet voice within her whispered, "You've lit candles, you've said Novenas, ... but have you truly prepared your soul?" That's when she found the writings of Padre Pio, who spoke of June 13th, not just as a feast, but as a spiritual window, open only to those who are willing to surrender completely. Maria didn't just light a candle that day. She followed the 3 sacred practices, in silence, with tears, and with a heart cracked open by desperation. What happened after will astonish you. But first, you need to understand why Padre Pio believed June 13th carries a power few are ready for. Padre Pio spoke of certain dates when heaven draws near, moments when the veil between this world and the next becomes thin, like breath on glass. July 23rd was one of those dates, but not because it's written on a calendar, because something sacred happens when the name St. Anthony is invoked with true faith. While many know him as the patron of lost things, Padre Pio saw far deeper. He called St. Anthony a carrier of spiritual keys, a heavenly figure who unlocks paths sealed by human pain. Paths of healing, reconciliation, financial restoration, and spiritual breakthrough. But this access isn't random, it's conditional. He said, "Grace seeks the soul that is ready, not perfect, but willing." That's why most people miss the miracle. They show up on July 23rd with candles and prayers, but no preparation. They ask for divine movement while carrying the chains of resentment, distraction, and pride. What Padre Pio discovered, and what you're about to learn, is that there are 3 sacred acts that create a channel between your soul and heaven. And the first one is the reason why even the most desperate prayers remain unanswered. Throughout church history, saints and mystics have spoken of days when divine energy flows more freely, feast days charged with spiritual electricity. But Padre Pio understood something deeper about July 23. It wasn't just about commemorating St. Anthony, it was about partnering with him. He often said, "When St. Anthony walks among us, hell trembles and hardened hearts break open." This wasn't poetic exaggeration. It was spiritual fact rooted in Padre Pio's own mystical encounters. According to his writings and those closest to him, July 23 is what he called a spiritual portal, a moment when the barriers between suffering souls and divine assistance begin to crumble. But like a gate that only opens with the right key, the blessings of that day are unlocked only through specific acts of alignment. Not everyone receives, not because heaven is distant, but because the soul is unready. Pio taught that grace does not chase us, it waits for us to prepare, and those who do see impossible things unfold. He identified 3 sacred keys, each one more powerful than the last. And the first key begins where most people never look, within their own heart. So what are these 3 sacred keys, these actions that transform July 23 from a tradition into a portal of grace? Padre Pio didn't speak in riddles, he gave precise instruction. 3 practices, 3 spiritual alignments, and each one unlocks something the soul desperately needs. 1. Forgiveness at dawn. Before the sun rises, sit in silence. Reflect honestly. Who have I not forgiven? Who have I wounded? Write the names down, no filters, no excuses. Then speak Padre Pio's prayer of liberation. Through Christ, I release them, and I release myself. Burn the paper safely. Watch as the smoke rises. That is the poison of resentment leaving your soul. This unlocks your heart so blessings can enter. 2. The candle of illumination. Later that morning, light a white or gold candle. Write a single, sincere intention what you most need. Saint Anthony, carry this to heaven. Let my faith be light in the darkness. Let the candle burn completely. It becomes your spiritual voice, still speaking even when you cannot. 3. The act of silent charity. Before the day ends, give. Not publicly, not for praise. Buy groceries for someone. Call a forgotten friend. Offer prayer for a stranger. Accompany it with this prayer. Lord, use this act to open the windows of heaven. This is the completion of the circuit. Forgiveness opens. Light attracts. Charity releases. When these three are done genuinely, silently, faithfully, Padre Pio said, heaven cannot help but respond. When Maria completed all three practices on July 23, something shifted. Not just in her circumstances, but in her soul. That morning, she forgave the man who had betrayed her, not because he deserved it, but because she deserved peace. As she burned that paper, she felt years of anger begin to dissolve. Then, as her candle flickered with her handwritten prayer for financial restoration, she felt something rise within her. Not control, but surrender. Her act of charity was simple. Just a small bag of groceries left anonymously for a family at her church. No one saw her do it, but heaven did. Within days, a forgotten insurance policy from her father's estate surfaced. The funds not only covered her losses, they restored her sense of divine order. But more powerful than the money was the lightness she felt. The bitterness was gone. Her prayers no longer felt blocked. Her soul had space for grace, psychologically, spiritually, emotionally. The burden lifted, because when you release pain, you make room for transcendent. And Maria is not alone. Those who follow these three sacred acts report inner peace, clarity, emotional freedom, even miraculous breakthroughs they never expected. But there's one more step to seal everything. July 23 is no longer just a date on your calendar. It's now a spiritual threshold, a moment when your soul can open to something eternal. But Padre Pio gave one final instruction, a prayer that must be spoken before sleep, a consecration that seals everything you've done, he said. A day like this must not end in silence, but in surrender. This closing prayer isn't just words. It is a spiritual lock, securing the grace you've invited, anchoring it in your life. Would you like to learn this final consecration, the one Padre Pio only taught to his most devoted followers? Then stay with us, because in our next video, you'll receive that powerful prayer and discover how it continues to work long after July 23 is over. Write in the comments, Saint Anthony, open my path, to claim your faith in action. And if this message stirred your soul, share it with 3 people who need a breakthrough. Subscribe now, because what Padre Pio revealed next may be the most sacred key of all.